The ambush. The vastness of space stretched out before the U.S. horizon, a modest human exploration vessel gliding silently through the star-speckled void. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the helm, her dark eyes scanning the holographic displays that surrounded her. The ship's mission was simple: chart the unexplored regions of the Omega Quadrant, gather data on potential habitable planets, and maybe, just maybe, make first contact with a new alien species. Status report, Lieutenant Hayes, Chen called out, her voice steady and calm. Lieutenant Alex Hayes, a young officer with a shock of red hair, responded without looking up from his console. All systems nominal, Captain. We're approaching the outer edge of the Nexus Nebula. Sensors are picking up some unusual energy readings, but nothing definitive yet. Chen nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Unusual is what we're here for, Lieutenant. Let's take a closer look. As the horizon edged closer to the swirling gases of the nebula, none of its crew could have anticipated the danger that lurked just beyond their sensors' range. Hidden within the nebula's chaotic energy patterns, a massive Zarkonian battlecruiser lay in wait, its cloaking technology rendering it invisible to the human vessel's scanners. Aboard the Zarkonian ship, War Commander Krastal clicked his mandibles in anticipation. His compound eyes glittered with malice as he observed the approaching human vessel on his view screen. "Prepare to decloak," Krastal ordered, his voice a harsh, insectoid rasp. "These humans have wandered too far from their protected zones. It's time they learned the price of their arrogance." The Zarkonians were a warrior race, driven by a deep-seated belief in their own superiority. To them, humans were nothing more than primitive apes who had somehow stumbled their way into space travel. The thought of these lesser beings exploring what the Zarkonians considered their territory was an insult that could not be tolerated. Back on the horizon, Lieutenant Hayes suddenly sat up straight, his fingers flying over his console. "Captain, I'm detecting a massive energy surge directly ahead. It's like something's appearing out of nowhere." Before Captain Chen could respond, the space before them shimmered and warped. In an instant, the enormous form of the Zarkonian battlecruiser materialized, dwarfing the horizon. Its hull was a nightmare of sharp angles and protruding weapon arrays, leaving no doubt as to its purpose. "Evasive maneuvers," Chen shouted, but it was too late. A brilliant beam of energy lanced out from the alien ship, striking the horizon's port side. The human vessel shuddered violently, alarms blaring throughout its corridors. "Shields at 60% and falling," Hayes reported, his voice tight with tension. "That was just a warning shot, Captain. They could have vaporized us if they wanted to." Chen gripped the arms of her command chair, her mind racing. This was supposed to be an exploration mission, not a combat situation. The horizon was equipped with basic defensive capabilities, but nothing that could stand up to a warship of that size. "Open a channel," she ordered, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "Let's see if we can talk our way out of this." As Hayes worked to establish communication, Chen took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever came next. She had trained for first contact scenarios, but nothing in her training had prepared her for this. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the alien bridge. Chen found herself face to face with War Commander Krastal, his insectoid features somehow managing to convey an air of smug superiority. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Exploration Vessel Horizon," she began, keeping her voice level. "We come in peace and mean you no harm. Please state your intentions." Krastal's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. When he spoke, his words were translated through the ship's computer, coming out in a metallic, emotionless tone. "Peace. You speak of peace while trespassing in Zarkonian space." The alien commander's compound eyes seemed to flash with anger. "Your very presence here is an act of aggression. Human, you will surrender your vessel immediately and prepare to be boarded. Resist, and we will destroy you without hesitation." Chen's mind raced. Surrender wasn't an option. Who knew what the Zarkonians would do to her crew? but neither was fighting. They were hopelessly outgunned. "War Commander," she said, trying to keep her voice diplomatic, "there must be some misunderstanding. We were unaware that this sector belonged to your people. We are on a peaceful mission of exploration. Surely we can resolve this without conflict." Krastel's response was to fire another warning shot, this one coming even closer to the Horizon's hull. The ship rocked violently, and Chen could hear the groaning of stressed metal throughout the vessel. "Shields at 40%, Captain," Hayes called out. "One more hit like that, and we're done for." Chen made a split-second decision. "All power to engines," she ordered. "Plot a course that will take us deeper into the nebula. Maybe we can lose them in the gas clouds." As the Horizon's engines roared to life, Krastel's image disappeared from the view screen. In its place, they could see the massive form of the Zarkonian battlecruiser turning to pursue them. "They're powering up weapons again, Captain," Hayes reported grimly. "I don't think they're interested in taking prisoners anymore." Chen gritted her teeth. "Evasive pattern delta. And someone get me engineering. We're going to need every ounce of power we can squeeze out of those engines." As the Horizon plunged into the swirling gases of the Nexus Nebula, the Zarkonian battlecruiser followed close behind. Energy beams lanced out, barely missing the human vessel as it weaved and dodged. In engineering, Chief Engineer Priya Sharma worked frantically to keep the ship's systems online. Sweat beaded on her dark skin as she rerouted power and bypassed damaged circuits. "Captain, this is Sharma," she called over the comm. "I've got good news and bad news. Good news is I can give you an extra 10% to the engines. Bad news is it might blow out half our systems in the process." Chen didn't hesitate. "Do it, Chief. We don't have much choice." As the Horizon surged forward with renewed speed, Chen turned to her tactical officer. "What about our weapons, Ensign Jackson? Any chance we can slow them down?" Ensign Zoe Jackson, a young woman with close-cropped hair and intense focus in her eyes, shook her head. "Our phasers are like pop guns compared to their weaponry, Captain." "But," she paused, a glint of an idea in her eye, "we might be able to use the nebula against them. If we can ignite some of these gas pockets, it could create a shockwave." Chen nodded. "Do it. Anything to buy us some time." As Jackson worked on her plan, the Horizon continued its desperate flight through the nebula. The gases swirled around them, sometimes obscuring their view entirely. It was like flying through a cosmic storm, with energy discharges and gravitational eddies threatening to tear the ship apart at any moment. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the space behind them. Ensign Jackson had managed to ignite a particularly volatile pocket of gas, creating a massive shockwave that buffeted both ships. "Direct hit on the Zarkonian vessel," Hayes called out, a note of triumph in his voice. "They're falling back, Captain." Chen allowed herself a small smile, but she knew they weren't out of danger yet. "Keep going. Let's put as much distance between us as we can while they're recovering." As the Horizon pushed deeper into the nebula, the crew worked tirelessly to repair what damage they could. But Chen knew they were running out of options. They couldn't keep this chase up forever. And eventually, the superior Zarkonian ship would catch up to them. "Captain," Lieutenant Hayes said, his voice quiet, "I've been analyzing the Zarkonian ship's energy signatures. There's something odd about them. They're not consistent with what we know of their technology." Chen raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Hayes brought up a series of complex diagrams on the main view screen. "See these oscillation patterns? They're almost identical to some experimental human technology we were working on back at Starfleet R and D. It's like they're using our own tech against us, but supercharged somehow." A chill ran down Chen's spine. If the Zarkonians had somehow gotten their hands on human technology, the implications were staggering. But it also meant that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. "Ensign Jackson," Chen called out. "If the Zarkonians are using adapted human tech, Could we potentially hack into their systems? Jackson's eyes widened at the suggestion. It's possible, Captain, but we'd need to get much closer to have any chance of success. Chen nodded grimly. Then that's what we'll do. All hands, brace for impact. We're going to turn this ship around and give the Zarkonians a surprise they won't soon forget. As the Horizon began its daring maneuver, turning to face its massive pursuer, the crew held their breath. They were either about to pull off one of the most audacious feats in human space exploration, or they were flying to their doom. The Zarkonian battlecruiser loomed before them, its weapons charging for what it surely thought would be the final blow. But Captain Sarah Chen and her crew weren't going down without a fight. As they hurtled towards their enemy, the fate of the Horizon, and perhaps the future of human-alien relations, hung in the balance. Technological surprises. The U.S. Horizon hurtled through space, its engines straining as it flew directly towards the massive Zarkonian battlecruiser. Captain Sarah Chen's hands gripped the arms of her command chair, her knuckles white with tension. This was it. Their desperate gamble was about to pay off, or they were about to be vaporized. Ensign Jackson, status on the hacking attempt. Chen called out, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. Zoe Jackson's fingers flew over her console, her face a mask of concentration. Almost there, Captain. Their firewalls are tough, but I'm detecting vulnerabilities consistent with human-based systems. Just a few more seconds. The Zarkonian ship loomed larger on the view screen, its weapons ports glowing with building energy. They were out of time. Suddenly, Jackson let out a triumphant shout. I'm in. Their weapon systems are temporarily offline. Chen didn't waste a second. Evasive maneuvers, full impulse, get us underneath their belly. The Horizon banked hard, narrowly avoiding a massive energy discharge that crackled harmlessly into space. The human vessel ducked beneath the Zarkonian battlecruiser, taking advantage of the temporary reprieve to position itself in the alien ship's blind spot. Aboard the Zarkonian vessel, War Commander Krastal was in a state of shock. His mandibles clicked furiously as he barked orders at his crew. How is this possible? He hissed. These primitive humans couldn't possibly have penetrated our defenses. Restore weapons immediately. But as his crew scrambled to comply, Krastal realized that something was very wrong. The humans hadn't just disabled their weapons. They had gained access to multiple systems throughout the ship. Doors were opening and closing randomly. Life support was fluctuating, and their own sensors seemed to be feeding them false information. Back on the Horizon, Chen allowed herself a small smile. Well done, Ensign. Now let's see what other surprises we can give our Zarkonian friends. As Jackson continued to wreak havoc on the alien ship systems, Lieutenant Hayes spoke up. Captain, I think I've figured out how they got our technology. Look at these energy signatures. They're consistent with a research outpost that went dark in the Gamma sector last year. We thought it was destroyed by a cosmic storm, but... Chen nodded grimly. But it looks like the Zarkonians got to it first. They'd been studying our tech, trying to reverse engineer it. And not doing a very good job of it. Chief Engineer Sharma chimed in over the comm. Captain, based on these readings, their integration of our technology with theirs is sloppy at best. It's like they understand the what but not the why of how our systems work. A plan began to form in Chen's mind. Sharma, if they don't fully understand our tech, could we use that against them? Maybe create a feedback loop or something similar. There was a pause as Sharma considered the idea. It's risky, Captain. We'd essentially be overloading their systems with contradictory commands. It could disable their ship entirely, but it could also cause a massive explosion. And we'd have to get very close to pull it off. Chen weighed their options. They were still vastly outgunned, and it was only a matter of time before the Zarkonians regained control of their ship. This might be their only chance. Do it, she ordered. Helm, prepare for extremely close quarters maneuvering. We're going to skim their hull if we have to. As the Horizon moved into position, barely 100 meters from the Zarkonian ship's hull, Tension on the bridge reached a fever pitch. Ensign Jackson and Chief Sharma worked in tandem, the young tactical officer providing access while the engineer crafted the complex series of commands that would hopefully overload the alien vessel's systems. On the Zarkonian bridge, Krastel watched in growing horror as his mighty warship was reduced to a malfunctioning hulk by a handful of humans in an exploration vessel. His crew worked frantically to regain control, but every system they managed to wrest back seemed to spawn two more problems. Impossible, Krastel muttered, his compound eyes fixed on the small human ship that dared to challenge them. How can they be doing this? They're nothing but primitive apes. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the Zarkonian ship. Emergency lights flashed as system after system began to fail catastrophically. Krastel felt his ship shudder beneath him, and for the first time in his long military career, he felt true fear. On the horizon, Chen watched the redouts with bated breath. "Sharma, talk to me. What's happening over there?" The engineer's voice came back tense but excited. "It's working, Captain. Their systems are cascading into failure, but there's a problem. The overload is causing a buildup in their main reactor. If it goes critical..." Chen didn't need Sharma to finish the sentence. If the Zarkonian ship's reactor exploded, it would take the horizon with it, and likely create a shockwave that would destabilize half the nebula. "Can we stop it?" Chen asked, already knowing the answer. Sharma's response was grim. "Not from here, Captain. Someone would need to be on their ship to manually shut down the reactor." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. They had won the battle, but at what cost? Chen closed her eyes, the weight of command pressing down on her. She couldn't ask any of her crew to undertake what would almost certainly be a suicide mission. But before she could speak, a voice broke the silence. "I'll go." Chen's eyes snapped open to see Lieutenant Alex Hayes standing from his station, a look of determination on his young face. "Lieutenant, no." Chen started to protest, but Hayes cut her off. "Captain, with all due respect, I'm the most qualified. I studied Zarkonian technology as part of my xenotech courses at the Academy. If anyone has a chance of shutting down that reactor, it's me." Chen wanted to argue, to find another way, but she knew Hayes was right. Time was running out, and they had no other options. "All right," she said softly, "but you're not going alone. Ensign Jackson, you're with him. Your hacking skills might make the difference between success and failure." As Hayes and Jackson prepared for their dangerous mission, Chen turned to the view screen. The Zarkonian ship was visibly struggling now, its hull plating flickering with unpredictable energy discharges. "Open a channel to the Zarkonian vessel," Chen ordered. When Krastel's face appeared on the screen, his usual arrogance was gone, replaced by a mix of fear and confusion. "War Commander," Chen began, her voice firm, "your ship is about to suffer a catastrophic reactor failure. We're sending over a team to help shut it down. Will you allow them safe passage?" Krastel's mandibles worked silently for a moment before he responded. You would help us, after what we've done?" Chen nodded solemnly. "That's what it means to be human, War Commander. We don't abandon others to die, even our enemies. Now, will you let my people board your ship?" The alien commander seemed to deflate, his bravado entirely gone. Yes, of course. We will not harm your team." As soon as the channel closed, Chen turned to Hayes and Jackson. "You heard the man. Get over there and shut down that reactor, and both of you, come back alive. That's an order." The two officers nodded, determination etched on their faces, and headed for the transporter room. Minutes later, Hayes and Jackson materialized on the Zarkonian ship. The scene that greeted them was one of chaos. Alien crew members rushed back and forth, desperately trying to control the cascade of system failures. Many stopped to stare at the two humans, a mix of fear and awe in their compound eyes. "This way," Hayes said, consulting his tricorder. "The reactor's 2 decks down." As they made their way through the alien vessel, Jackson couldn't help but marvel at the strange mix of technologies around them. It's like they took our tech and just stuck it onto theirs without really understanding how it all works together, she muttered. Hayes nodded grimly. That's probably why this overload is so catastrophic. The systems aren't meant to interact this way. When they reached the reactor room, they found it in a state of barely controlled chaos. Zarkonian engineers buzzed around frantically, but it was clear they were out of their depth. Hayes approached what appeared to be the main control console, his hands hovering over the alien interface. Okay, Jackson, I need you to get into their computer systems. We need to initiate a controlled shutdown, but their safety protocols are fighting us every step of the way. Jackson nodded, pulling out her data pad and connecting it to a nearby access port. As her fingers flew over the screen, Hayes began the delicate process of shutting down the reactor. Minutes ticked by, each second feeling like an eternity. Sweat beaded on Hayes' forehead as he worked, the complex equations and alien technology pushing his skills to the limit. Jackson muttered a constant stream of technical jargon, bypassing firewalls and overriding safety systems to give Hayes the access he needed. Just when it seemed they might be too late, the reactor's ominous whine began to die down. The pulsing red emergency lights faded, replaced by a softer, steady glow. Hayes let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. We did it, he said, a note of disbelief in his voice. Jackson grinned, the tension of the last few minutes finally releasing. Never doubted you for a second, sir. As the two humans stepped back from the console, they suddenly became aware of the crowd of Zarkonians that had gathered around them. The alien engineers stared at Hayes and Jackson with a mixture of awe and confusion. One of the Zarkonians, seemingly braver than the rest, stepped forward. When he spoke, his words were translated through Hayes and Jackson's universal translators. How did you do that? The alien asked, his voice filled with genuine curiosity. We've been studying your technology for months, but we could never make it work like that. Hayes and Jackson exchanged a glance. This was an opportunity, not just to save lives, but to potentially bridge the gap between their species. It's not just about understanding the technology, Hayes began, choosing his words carefully. It's about understanding the principles behind it. The why is just as important as the how. As Hayes launched into a simplified explanation of human engineering principles, Jackson couldn't help but smile. What had started as a desperate battle for survival had somehow turned into an impromptu cultural exchange. Back on the horizon, Captain Chen watched the readings from the Zarkonian ship with growing relief. The reactor was stable, the cascade of system failures had been halted, and most importantly, her crew was safe. A message came through from Hayes. Reactor stabilized, Captain. And I think we might have made some new friends. Chen leaned back in her chair, a mix of emotions washing over her. They had faced almost certain destruction and come out the other side. More than that, they had potentially opened the door to a new understanding between humans and Zarkonians. As she prepared to contact Starfleet and report on their extraordinary encounter, Chen couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This was what humanity was all about, facing the unknown with courage, using their ingenuity to overcome seemingly impossible odds, and always reaching out a hand in friendship, even to those who had once been enemies. The adventure was far from over, but Chen knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, her crew, and humanity as a whole, was ready to face them. The chase, the tense standoff between the U.S. Horizon and the Zarkonian battlecruiser, had evolved into an uneasy truce. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the viewscreen intently as Lieutenant Hayes and Ensign Jackson continued their impromptu technology exchange with the Zarkonian engineers. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Priya Sharma's voice came over the comm. I've been analyzing the data we've gathered on the Zarkonian ship. There's something you need to see. Chen nodded to her first officer, Commander Eli Rodriguez, to take the con, and made her way to engineering. As she entered, She found Sharma hunched over a complex holographic display, her dark eyes narrowed in concentration. "What have you found, Chief?" Chen asked, studying the swirling mass of data before her. Sharma looked up, her expression grave. "It's not just our technology they've integrated into their systems, Captain. There are traces of at least 3 other species tech in there. Some of it is far beyond our current capabilities." Chen felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you saying the Zarkonians have been attacking and stealing technology from multiple species?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Sharma confirmed. "And based on the energy signatures, I'd bet my last credit that they didn't acquire this tech through friendly exchanges." Before Chen could respond, the ship's red alert klaxon began to blare. Chen and Sharma exchanged a quick glance before racing back to the bridge. "Report," Chen barked as she emerged from the turbolift. Commander Rodriguez turned to her, his face tense. 3 Zarkonian ships just dropped out of warp, Captain. Heavy cruiser class. They're hailing us. And the battle cruiser." Chen's mind raced. Had the disabled Zarkonian ship called for reinforcements? Or was this an independent patrol that had stumbled upon them? "On screen," she ordered, straightening her uniform. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the lead Zarkonian cruiser. A large, imposing Zarkonian stood at its center, his carapace adorned with intricate markings that Chen assumed denoted high rank. "I am High Commander Vexkar of the Zarkonian Empire," the alien's translated voice boomed. "You will power down your vessels immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with lethal force." Chen's eyes narrowed. She glanced at the tactical display, noting with growing concern that Hayes and Jackson were still aboard the disabled Zarkonian battlecruiser. "High Commander," Chen began, her voice steady. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Ship Horizon. We are on a peaceful mission of exploration. There has been a misunderstanding with one of your vessels, but we've been working together to—" Vexkar cut her off with a harsh clicking sound. "Silence, human. We are well aware of what has transpired here. War Commander Krastal will face judgment for his failure to subdue your pitiful vessel. As for you," the High Commander's compound eyes seemed to glitter with malice, "you will surrender your ship and all its technology. The Zarkonian Empire does not tolerate threats to its supremacy." Chen's mind raced. They were outgunned and outnumbered, with 2 of her crew members trapped on a potentially hostile ship. Surrender wasn't an option, not with what they now knew about the Zarkonians' technological piracy. She made a split-second decision. "I'm afraid I can't do that, High Commander. Horizon out." As soon as the channel closed, Chen turned to her crew. "Red alert. Shields up. All power to engines. Tactical. Target the lead cruiser's weapons array." The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity. Chen opened a channel to the engineering deck. "Sharma, I need every ounce of power you can give me to the engines and shields. We're going to make a run for it." "Aye, Captain." Sharma's voice came back, strained but determined. "I'll give you everything we've got." Chen turned to her communications officer. "Get me Hayes and Jackson. Tell them to get to a transporter pad now. We're going to try to beam them out as soon as we're in range." As the Horizon's engines roared to life, the 3 Zarkonian cruisers opened fire. The small human vessel rocked under the barrage, but its shields held, barely. "Evasive pattern Delta," Chen ordered. "Head for the Nexus Nebula. Maybe we can lose them in the gas clouds." The Horizon banked hard, narrowly avoiding another volley of energy weapons. As they sped towards the swirling clouds of the nebula, Chen couldn't help but marvel at the skill of her helm officer, Ensign Tokarin. The young Andorian's antennae twitched with concentration as his blue hands danced over the controls, coaxing impossible maneuvers out of the ship. "Captain," Rodriguez called out, "the disabled battlecruiser. It's powering up its engines." Chen's heart sank. Had Krastal decided to join his brethren in attacking them? But as she watched the tactical display, she saw something unexpected. The massive Zarkonian ship was moving to intercept one of the pursuing cruisers. There They're blocking for us, Rodriguez said, disbelief evident in his voice. A small smile played at the corners of Chen's mouth. It seemed their impromptu tech exchange had made more of an impact than she'd realized. Let's not waste the opportunity. Rin, full impulse. Get us into that nebula. As the horizon plunged into the roiling gases of the Nexus Nebula, the pursuing Zarkonian ships hesitated. The nebula was notorious for its unpredictable energy discharges and gravitational eddies. Entering it was risky even for a small, agile ship like the Horizon. For the larger Zarkonian cruisers, it was potentially suicidal. But High Commander Vexkar was not to be deterred. Follow them, he barked to his fleet. I will not let these humans escape with their technological secrets. Inside the nebula, visibility dropped to near zero. The Horizon's sensors, already strained from the earlier battle, struggled to penetrate the dense clouds of gas and energy discharges. Rin, can you navigate this? Chen asked, gripping the arms of her chair as the ship shuddered around them. The Andorian's antennae quivered, but his voice was steady. I'll do my best, Captain, but I can't promise it'll be a smooth ride. Suddenly, a massive energy discharge blossomed directly in their path. Ren yanked the controls hard, sending the ship into a barrel roll that narrowly avoided the deadly surge. The inertial dampeners struggled to keep up, and Chen felt her stomach lurch. Status on the Zarkonian ships, she called out, fighting to keep her voice steady. Rodriguez consulted his readings. 2 cruisers have entered the nebula, Captain. They're having a harder time than we are, but they're still on our tail. The 3rd cruiser and the battlecruiser are engaged in combat just outside the nebula's edge. Chen nodded grimly. At least Krastal was keeping one of their pursuers occupied. But they still had 2 heavily armed warships on their tail, in an environment that could destroy them all with a single misstep. Sharma, Chen called over the comm. I need options. Can we use the nebula against them somehow? There was a moment of silence, broken only by the occasional crackle of energy discharges against the Horizon's shields. Then Sharma's voice came back, excitement evident in her tone. Captain, I think I've got something. The nebula's full of volatile pockets of tylium gas. If we can ignite one near the Zarkonian ships, it could create a chain reaction. Chen finished, catching on to the engineer's plan. But how do we ignite it without blowing ourselves up in the process? All right, Lieutenant, she said, a small smile playing at her lips. Let's hear what our new Zarkonian friends have to say. Unlikely allies. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the Horizon's conference room, her gaze fixed on the unlikely group gathered around the table. To her left sat Lieutenant Alex Hayes and Ensign Zoe Jackson, still looking somewhat worse for wear after their ordeal on the Zarkonian battlecruiser. To her right, Commander Eli Rodriguez and Chief Engineer Priya Sharma completed the human contingent. But it was the beings seated across from them that truly made this meeting extraordinary. War Commander Krastal, his carapace still bearing scorch marks from the recent battle, sat rigidly in a chair that was clearly not designed for Zarkonian physiology. Flanking him were 2 of his senior officers, their compound eyes darting nervously around the room. Well, Chen began, breaking the tense silence. I think it's safe to say that this is not how any of us expected our day to go. A ripple of nervous laughter went through the room, the universal translators rendering Krastal's mandible clicks into something approximating a chuckle. Indeed, Captain Chen, Krastal responded, his translated voice sounding almost sheepish. I must admit, when I set out to capture your vessel, I did not anticipate ending the day by requesting asylum from you. Chen nodded, her expression serious. About that, War Commander. I think we all need to hear exactly what's going on. Why are you and your crew seeking to defect from the Zarkonian Empire? Krastal's antennae twitched. A gesture that Hayes had explained was a sign of discomfort among the Zarkonians. It is not a simple matter, Captain, but I will try to explain. The alien commander launched into his tale, describing how the Zarkonian Empire had once been a peaceful, scientifically minded civilization. But over the centuries, a militant faction had risen to power, pushing for aggressive expansion and technological superiority at any cost. We began by trading with other species, Krastel explained, his voice tinged with regret. But soon, trade became theft. Exploration became invasion. We justified it by telling ourselves that we were superior, that we had the right to take what we wanted from lesser species. Chen exchanged a glance with Rodriguez. It was a story they had heard before, on too many worlds across the galaxy. But something changed, Chen prompted gently. Krastel nodded, his compound eyes seeming to focus on some distant point. It was your ship, Captain. Your crew. When your officers came aboard to save us from our own folly, they didn't just fix our reactor. They showed us a different way of thinking. Hayes spoke up, his voice thoughtful. We just explained how the technology worked, how different systems interacted. Exactly, Krastel said, turning to face the young lieutenant. You freely shared knowledge that we would have killed to obtain. And in doing so, you made us question everything we had been taught about our supposed superiority. Chen leaned forward, her elbows resting on the table. So you and your crew decided to defect. But why now? Why take the risk of opposing your own fleet? Krastel's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound the translators rendered as a heavy sigh. Because we realize that if we didn't act now, we might never get another chance. The Empire is planning something big, Captain. Something that could destabilize this entire sector of the galaxy. A chill ran down Chen's spine. What kind of plan? They call it Project Omega, Krastel said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I don't know all the details, but I know it involves technology stolen from multiple species, including yours. They're building some kind of superweapon, capable of destroying entire star systems. The room fell silent as the implications of Krastel's words sank in. Chen's mind raced, trying to process this new information and its potential consequences. If what you're saying is true, Rodriguez said, breaking the silence, then we need to inform Starfleet immediately. This goes way beyond our original mission parameters. Chen nodded in agreement, but before she could speak, the ship's red alert klaxon began to blare. Bridge to Captain Chen, Ensign Rin's voice came over the comm. We've got company. 3 Zarkonian dreadnoughts just dropped out of warp. They're charging weapons. Chen was on her feet in an instant. On my way, Ensign. All hands to battle stations. As the group rushed to the bridge, Krastel fell into step beside Chen. Captain, those dreadnoughts, they're part of the Empire's elite fleet. They must have been sent to ensure our silence. Chen's jaw set in determination. Well, they're going to be disappointed. We're not going down without a fight. They burst onto the bridge, each officer rushing to their station. On the view screen, 3 massive Zarkonian ships loomed, their sleek hulls bristling with weapon arrays. Shields up, Chen ordered, sliding into her command chair. Tactical, analyze their defenses. Find me a weakness. As her crew worked frantically to prepare for the impending battle, Chen turned to Krastel. War Commander, I could use your expertise. What can you tell me about those ships? Krastel's compound eyes scanned the tactical display. They're Ravager-class dreadnoughts, the pride of the Imperial fleet, heavily armored, with regenerative shields and enough firepower to reduce a small moon to rubble. Chen's heart sank. The horizon, already damaged from their previous encounters, stood little chance against one such ship, let alone 3. Suddenly, Krastel's antennae perked up. But there might be a way. Captain, your ship's deflector dish. Can it be modified to emit a rotating tachyon pulse? Chen turned to Sharma, who was already nodding enthusiastically. Yes, we could do that. But why? The dreadnought shields have a vulnerability, Krastel explained quickly. A rapidly rotating tachyon pulse, if calibrated correctly, could create microscopic fluctuations in their shield matrix. It wouldn't be much, but it might be enough to get a few shots through. Chen didn't hesitate. Do it, Sharma. Work with Krastel on the calibrations. Hayes, I want you coordinating our weapon systems with their shield fluctuations. As her crew and their unlikely Zarkonian allies worked feverishly to implement the plan, the enemy dreadnoughts moved into attack formation. Incoming transmission, Rodriguez reported. It's High Commander Vexcar. Chen took a deep breath. On screen. Vexcar's face filled the view screen, his compound eyes glittering with barely contained rage. Captain Chen, you have something that belongs to me. Return War Commander Krastel and his crew immediately, or be destroyed. Chen stood, facing the alien commander with steely determination. I'm afraid I can't do that, High Commander. Krastel and his people have requested asylum, and we've granted it. Vexcar's mandibles clicked furiously. You naive fool. You have no idea what forces you're meddling with. The Zarkonian Empire will not be denied its destiny. And what destiny is that? Chen shot back. To steal technology from other races, to build superweapons capable of destroying entire star systems. That's not a destiny, Vexcar. It's a path to mutual destruction. For a moment, Vexcar seemed taken aback. Then his eyes narrowed. So the traitors have been talking. All the more reason to obliterate you all. Prepare to be boarding by the Zornak. The transmission cut off abruptly. Chen turned to Krastel, her eyebrow raised. Zornak. The Zarkonians' antennae drooped. Elite shock troops, Captain. Cybernetically enhanced warriors, stronger and faster than any organic being. If they board your ship, Chen nodded grimly. Then we'd better make sure they don't get the chance. Status on the Tachyon Pulse. Ready, Captain, Sharma reported. But we'll only have a few seconds of shield vulnerability for each pulse. We'll have to time our shots perfectly. Zornak boarding pods detected, Jackson called out. They're launching from the lead dreadnought. Chen's mind raced. They were out of time. Rin, evasive pattern Omega. Keep us moving. Tactical, target those pods with everything we've got. Sharma, initiate the Tachyon Pulse on my mark. The horizon banked hard, narrowly avoiding the first salvo from the dreadnoughts. Energy beams lanced through space, some missing by mere meters, others glancing off the ship's already strained shields. Mark, Chen shouted. The deflector dish pulsed, sending out a carefully calibrated tachyon beam. For a split second, the lead dreadnought's shields shimmered. Fire, Chen ordered. The horizon's phasers lashed out, punching through the momentary weakness in the enemy's defenses. Explosions blossomed across the dreadnought's hull. Direct hits, Hayes reported, excitement in his voice. Their forward weapons array is disabled. A cheer went up from the crew, but Chen knew they were far from out of danger. The other two dreadnoughts were moving to flank them, and the Zornak pods were still incoming. Boarding pods, 30 seconds to impact, Jackson warned. Chen turned to Krastel. Those Zornak troops, how do we stop them? The Zarkonian's mandibles clicked rapidly as he thought. Their cybernetic enhancements make them nearly invulnerable to most weapons, but they're also their weakness. A concentrated electromagnetic pulse could overload their systems. Chen nodded. Sharma, can we? Already on it, Captain, the engineer interrupted. Rigging up portable EMP devices now. I'll have security teams deploy them at likely breach points. The ship rocked violently as another barrage from the dreadnoughts struck home. Shields at 15%. Rodriguez called out. We can't take much more of this. Chen gripped the arms of her chair. They were putting up a good fight, but they were still hopelessly outgunned. Unless... Krastel, she said, turning to the Zarkonian commander. Your ship, is it still combat capable? Krastel's antennae twitched in surprise. Yes, but my crew is divided. I can't guarantee their loyalty in a fight against their own people. Chen's eyes blazed with determination. Then we'll have to give them a reason to choose a side. Open a channel to your ship. As the view screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of Krastel's battlecruiser, Chen stood. Her uniform was singed, her hair disheveled, but her voice rang with authority. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the U.S. Horizon. I know you can see the battle unfolding. I know many of you are uncertain, torn between loyalty to your empire and the realization that what the empire is doing is wrong. She paused, letting her words sink in. But right now, you have a choice to make. You can stand by and watch as your leaders destroy not just us, but any hope for a peaceful future. Or you can take a stand. Fight with us. Show the galaxy that the Zarkonian people are more than conquerors, that you can be partners, allies, friends. The Zarkonian bridge crew looked at each other, mandibles clicking in agitation. Chen held her breath, hoping her words had reached them. Suddenly, the battlecruiser's weapons powered up. For a heart-stopping moment, Chen thought they were going to fire on the horizon. But then, with a brilliant flash of energy, the Zarkonian ship unleashed a full barrage at the nearest enemy dreadnought. Cheers erupted on the horizon's bridge. Krastal's antennae stood straight up in what Chen had learned was an expression of joy. "Looks like we got ourselves some backup," Chen said, a grin spreading across her face. "All right, people, let's make it count. Coordinate our attacks with the battlecruiser. Let's show these dreadnoughts what happens when you mess with the combined might of humanity and Zarkonian rebels." As the battle raged on, with the horizon and its newfound allies fighting side by side against the Imperial dreadnoughts, Chen couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. They were still outgunned, still in desperate peril, but they were no longer alone. Whatever the outcome, this day would mark a turning point, not just for the crew of the Horizon, but for the entire sector. The Zarkonian Empire's plans had been exposed, and a seed of rebellion had been planted among its own people. As energy beams crisscrossed space and explosions blossomed against the starry backdrop, Chen steeled herself for the fight ahead. They had a long way to go, but for the first time since this wild adventure began, she truly believed they had a chance of not just surviving, but of changing the course of history. "All hands," she called out, her voice steady and determined. "Prepare for close-quarters combat. We're taking the fight to them." A new era. The bridge of the U.S. Horizon was a cacophony of alarms, shouted orders, and the distant rumble of weapons fire. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the center of it all, her uniform singed and her hair disheveled, but her eyes blazing with determination. "Status report," she called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. Commander Rodriguez responded, his hands flying over his console. "Shields at 10%, multiple hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Emergency force fields are holding. For now, the Zarkonian battlecruiser is taking heavy fire from the remaining dreadnoughts." Chen nodded grimly. They had managed to disable one of the enemy dreadnoughts, but the other two were still very much in the fight. And now, Zornak boarding pods were attaching themselves to the Horizon's hull like parasites. "Captain," Ensign Jackson called out, her voice tense, "I'm detecting energy buildups in those pods. They're about to breach." Chen's mind raced. They were out of time and options. But as she opened her mouth to give what might be her final orders, an unexpected voice cut through the din. "Captain Chen," Krastal said, his translated voice filled with a mix of desperation and hope. "There might be a way to end this, but it's risky, and it will require trust on both our parts." Chen turned to the Zarkonian commander, eyebrow raised. "I'm open to suggestions, Krastal. What do you have in mind?" Krastal's antennae twitched as he explained rapidly. "The Dreadnought's main computer cores are linked to a central network. If we could upload a virus into that network, we might be able to disable their weapons and shields." "A virus?" Chen asked, her brow furrowing. "Do we have something like that?" Krastal's compound eyes seemed to glimmer. "Not yet. But with your permission, I believe Lieutenant Hayes and I could create one, combining Zarkonian and human coding techniques." Chen glanced at Hayes, who nodded eagerly. "We can do it, Captain. But we'll need direct access to their systems." The implication hung heavy in the air. Someone would have to board one of the enemy dreadnoughts, a suicide mission by any measure. Before Chen could respond, the ship rocked violently. "Hull breach on deck 5. Rodriguez shouted. Zornak troops have boarded. Chen made a split-second decision. Do it, she ordered Hayes and Krastel. You have 10 minutes. Commander Rodriguez, you have the con. I'm leading a team to repel the boarders. As Hayes and Krastel rushed to work on the virus, Chen grabbed a phaser rifle and headed for the turbolift. Sharma, Jackson, you're with me, she called out. Let's go introduce the Zornak to some good old-fashioned human hospitality. The scene that greeted them on Deck 5 was one of chaos and destruction. The Zornak lived up to their fearsome reputation. Towering cyborg warriors, their organic Zarkonian parts enhanced with gleaming metal and pulsing energy weapons. Remember, Chen said to her team as they took cover behind a fallen bulkhead, aim for their cybernetic parts. The EMPs should disrupt their systems. What followed was a frantic, close-quarters battle through the corridors of the horizon. The Zornak were incredibly strong and resilient, shrugging off phaser blasts that would have felled any normal opponent. But Chen and her team had the advantage of knowledge and desperation. Sharma's hastily constructed EMP devices proved effective, shorting out the Zornak's cybernetic enhancements and leaving them vulnerable. Slowly but surely, they began to push the invaders back. As they fought, Chen couldn't help but marvel at the unlikely alliance that had formed. Humans and Zarkonians fighting side by side against a common enemy. It was a far cry from the hostile first contact they had experienced mere hours ago. Back on the bridge, Hayes and Krastel worked feverishly, their disparate technologies and coding styles meshing in ways neither had thought possible. It's ready, Hayes called out finally, his voice filled with equal parts excitement and trepidation. But we'll need to get it into their main computer core. Rodriguez, overseeing the ongoing space battle, grimaced. The only way to do that is to transport directly onto one of the dreadnoughts. It's a one-way trip. There was a moment of heavy silence on the bridge. Then Krastel stepped forward, his mandibles set in determination. I'll go, he said simply. Hayes looked at the Zarkonian in shock. Krastel, no, it's too dangerous. I should be the one to go. But Krastel shook his head. No, my friend. This is my responsibility. My people caused this conflict. It's fitting that one of us should end it. Before anyone could argue further, the ship rocked with another impact. Shields are failing. An officer called out. We can't take much more of this. Rodriguez made a decision. Do it, he ordered. Transporter room. Prepare to beam Commander Krastel to the lead dreadnought's computer core. As Krastel made his way to the transporter room, Hayes handed him a data chip containing the virus. Good luck, the human said, extending his hand in the traditional Earth gesture. Krastel looked at the offered hand for a moment, then grasped it firmly. Thank you, Alex, he said, using Hayes' first name, for showing me that there's more to strength than conquest. With that, Krastel stepped onto the transporter pad and disappeared in a shimmer of energy. On Deck 5, Chen and her team had finally managed to coral the remaining Zornak into a sealed-off section. As they caught their breath, Chen's communicator chirped. Chen here, she answered, her voice ragged from exertion. Captain, Rodriguez's voice came through. Krastel has boarded the enemy dreadnought. He's attempting to upload the virus now. Chen felt a mix of hope and dread. Understood. Keep me posted. We've contained the borders for now, but I don't know how long we can hold them. As if in response to her words, a massive blow struck the sealed doors, denting them inward. The Zornak were not going to give up easily. Get ready, Chen told her team, raising her phaser rifle. This is where we make our stand. But just as the doors began to give way, something unexpected happened. The Zornak suddenly froze, their cybernetic components sputtering and sparking. Captain, Rodriguez's excited voice came over the comm. Krastel did it. The virus is spreading through the enemy network. The dreadnoughts are losing power. A cheer went up from Chen's team. On the bridge, the crew watched in amazement as the massive Zarkonian warships began to drift, their weapons going dark. But their celebration was short-lived. "Captain," Hayes called out, his voice tight with concern, "I'm detecting a massive power buildup in the lead dreadnought. Their reactor, it's going critical." Chen's heart sank. "Krastal," she whispered. Then, louder, "Bridge, lock onto Krastal's signal. Get him out of there." There was a tense moment of silence. Then, "I'm sorry, Captain," the transporter chief's voice came back, filled with regret. "There's too much interference. I can't get a lock." Chen closed her eyes, feeling the weight of command more heavily than ever before. Krastal had sacrificed himself to save them all. "All hands," she said, her voice carrying throughout the ship. "Brace for impact. Helm, get us as far away from that dreadnought as possible." The Horizon's engines strained as it pulled away from the doomed Zarkonian ship. Behind them, the dreadnought's reactor reached critical mass. In a blinding flash of light, it exploded, the shockwave catching the other dreadnought and destroying it as well. As the light faded and the debris field settled, an eerie silence fell over the sector of space that had, moments ago, been a raging battlefield. Chen made her way back to the bridge, her mind reeling from the events of the past few hours. As she stepped out of the turbolift, she was greeted by a sight that took her breath away. The view screen showed not just the aftermath of the battle, but dozens of new ships dropping out of warp. Starfleet vessels, summoned by the Horizon's distress call, had finally arrived. "Captain," Rodriguez said, a note of awe in his voice, "we're being hailed. It's Fleet Admiral Sanchez." Chen straightened her uniform as best she could and nodded. On screen, the image of a stern-faced woman in an admiral's uniform appeared. "Captain Chen," she began, her voice a mix of concern and admiration. "It seems you've had quite the adventure. Are you all right?" Chen couldn't help but let out a small, tired laugh. "We've been better, Admiral. But we're alive, thanks to some unlikely allies and a lot of luck." Over the next few hours, as Starfleet medical and engineering teams swarmed the Horizon, Chen debriefed Admiral Sanchez on everything that had transpired. The initial conflict with Krastal's ship, the revelation of the Zarkonian Empire's plans, the defection, and the final battle. "This changes everything," Sanchez said finally, her expression grave. "The revelation of this Project Omega and the potential for Zarkonian rebellion. The entire sector could be destabilized." Chen nodded, feeling the weight of their discoveries. "What happens now, Admiral?" Sanchez's expression softened slightly. "Now, Captain, you and your crew get some well-deserved rest. You've done more than anyone could have asked. Let Starfleet handle the diplomatic fallout." But as Chen looked around at her battered but unbeaten crew, at the Zarkonian rebels who had chosen to stand with them, she knew that this was just the beginning. "With all due respect, Admiral," she said, straightening her shoulders, "I think the Horizon and her crew are uniquely positioned to help navigate this new reality. We'd forged bonds with the Zarkonian rebels. They trust us." Sanchez studied Chen for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well, Captain. I'll recommend to Starfleet Command that the Horizon be assigned as our primary liaison with the Zarkonian rebels. But first, get your ship patched up. I have a feeling you're going to need it in working order for what's to come." As the communication ended, Chen turned to her crew. Their faces were tired but resolute, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. "Well," she said, a small smile playing at her lips, "it looks like our mission of exploration just got a lot more interesting. We've made first contact, averted a war, and maybe changed the course of an entire civilization. Not bad for a day's work." A ripple of laughter went through the bridge. Even the Zarkonian rebels, still somewhat unsure of their place in this new paradigm, clicked their mandibles in what Chen was learning to recognize as amusement. As she settled back into her command chair, surveying the mix of humans and Zarkonians working side by side to repair the ship, Chen felt a surge of pride and hope. They had faced impossible odds and emerged not just victorious, but with the potential to forge a new era of cooperation and understanding. The stars on the view screen seemed to shine a little brighter as the horizon prepared for its next adventure. Whatever the future held, diplomatic negotiations, further exploration, or new threats from the remnants of the Zarkonian Empire, Chen knew that her crew, both human and Zarkonian, would face it together. As the horizon moved off into the starfield, escorted by its Starfleet allies, Chen couldn't help but feel that they were on the cusp of something truly extraordinary. They had set out to explore strange new worlds and to seek out new life and new civilizations. In the process, they had not only fulfilled that mission beyond their wildest expectations, but had also shown that even in the darkest moments, the spirit of cooperation and the strength of diversity could overcome any obstacle. The adventure was far from over. In fact, it felt like it was just beginning. But whatever lay ahead, the crew of the Horizon, human and Zarkonian alike, were ready to face it, united in their commitment to exploration, diplomacy, and the endless possibilities of the cosmos. "Helm," Chen said, her voice filled with quiet determination, "set a course for the future. Warp Factor 5. As the Horizon's engines hummed to life, propelling them into the unknown, Chen couldn't help but smile. This was why they had joined Starfleet. This was the promise of space exploration, and they were living it every incredible moment. The stars streaked by as the horizon leaped into warp, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of two species and the promise of a new era of interstellar cooperation. The journey ahead would be challenging, but with their newfound allies and their unwavering spirit, Chen knew that they were ready for anything the universe might throw their way. The adventure, it seemed, was just beginning.